Welcome to the Medical Device Made Easy podcast. Here is Munir Alazouzi from easymedicaldevice.com. And today we'll talk about harmonized standards. So we have a lot of questions on harmonized standards. Should I use them? Or okay, is it forbidden to not use them? Or can I use another one? I prefer another one, etc., etc. So these are mainly the questions that we will try to answer to you. And for that, I have with me Beat Keller from SMDC. So Beat, welcome to the Medical Device Made Easy podcast.
Thank you for your invite, Monir.
Great.
Nice to be
And
here.
Beat, we had a previous episode before in your former life because you were within another company. So now you opened your own consultancy firm. So mainly you are now not. I can't remember what was the name of the previous company, but mainly you are now with your own company with your own thing. So you
Exactly.
changed a bit. Can you make an introduction of yourself, even for people maybe that already know you from the other company, but want to know you more from this one?
For sure. Thank you. So my life started earlier as a engineering a developer. So I started as a software developer in the medical device industry, and then more and more came into the regulatory and quality area. And then for an engineering company, I had the honor to build up this section of the company. So I built up the complete regulatory and quality team for this company, which I left about 1.5 months ago, so that I can start my own company, which was already a dream for me since years. And now I try to get my own company on the foot.
So is the dream a nice dream now, or it's a
It
nightmare?
is. It is definitively. And yeah, now I'm not only the consultant, or before I was the project manager or the software engineer. Now I'm everything in one person. So I'm the
Yeah,
CEO, HR, finance, IT,
yeah.
and
This is
also the consultant.
exactly this is the other side of being a one man company consultant. So mainly, yeah, you have to be everybody, and you have to manage everything at the same time. So it can be nice. It's just you have to like it, if I can say so. Great.
It's differently new, but I like it.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, so today we wanted to talk about harmonized standards with you, Beat. And maybe to start, maybe is just can we explain to the audience what are those harmonized standards? What are why we call them harmonized? What is exactly the trick or the tip here about those standards?
Yeah. So the harmonized standards are the standards which are, this is there where it's coming from, harmonized for the MDR. So they are adopted more or less for the MDR. And not only that, they are also should be listed in the official journal of the European Union, and then in the MDR, but also in all the other European new approach legislations like the IVDR, machinery regulation, and so on. We can presume conformity, and this is the huge advantage we have with the standards. So we can presume that we are in conformance with the legislations or with the regulation, and don't have to show it again and again that we are compliant.
So example here. So I am following a legislation like the machinery legislation. They have some harmonized standards, but I say, oh no, 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 I don't want to use those harmonized standards. I use some other standards that are maybe available also. Um, does it mean that I'm not conform to the machinery legislation or?
You can be conform, but it can be easily challenged. So if an authority asks you, hey, how can you, how do you show compliance? Then you have your argument and to explain why you think this other standard or the way you have done it, it must even not be a standard. You can have your own solution, but you have to explain to an authority, to a notified body, maybe even to a court, why you think this is in conformance with the legislation, with the regulation. And if you're using this harmonized standard, this can be presumed. So there was already someone which checked that, and you can be sure you are in conformance.
So I suppose notified body or auditors when they arrive and they say, "Oh, there is an harmonized standards," and somebody use something else, they were like, "Oh my God, what?" I will have more
Yes.
work because I have to check, I have to ask more questions, it's more work for them, I suppose.
Unearth the pulse of the medtech world with MedTech Conf, a dynamic platform featuring global events on medical devices, biologicals, IVD, and pharmaceuticals. Stay informed, stay ahead, connect, share, and elevate your knowledge. Become an official sponsor. Make your event shine on the map. MedTech Conf, your key to the medtech universe. Remember, the future is now, and it's at your fingertips with MedTech Conf.
Yeah, and even especially now for the medical device regulation, if you take the MDCG guidance for the standards, there it's written that the notified body must check and have a look into the harmonized standard, even if the manufacturer does not say he is compliant with this standard. So the notified body will compare your solution with the harmonized standard solution. And then you need to show how you ensure you're at least as safe and as effective as if you would have done it with the standard.
Exactly, yeah. And so those standards, are they new standards or are they existing standards? So, I mean, are we creating an harmonized standards from the beginning or how it is working there?
It can, but not have to be. So if we go to the beginning of this process, the first step is that the European Union mandates these standardization bodies to write the standards. In Europe, currently we have 3 standardization bodies which do that. This is CEN, CENELEC, and ETSI.
Okay.
And these organizations then get a list of what they need to write on harmonized standards. For the medical device, for example, and it's written, you need one for the quality management, we need one for risk management, we need one for electrical safety and for EMC and so on. And then the standardization bodies need to decide, do we have already a standard on international level? Usually it's an ISO or IEC standard, which we can adopt for Europe and then publish as a harmonized EN standard. Or if there is nothing, we need to write one from scratch.
Okay.
Usually we call them in standardization the homegrown standards.
The homegrown. Okay.
Homegrown. So we grow it up in Europe and not use one which is already grown up internationally.
So in this process, as you mentioned, we talk mainly about ISO standards, ASTM, or I can't remember the other ones from other regions. Can they be harmonized in Europe also?
So the ASTM, for example, is not or does not have a European body, so they can't get this mandate. So these are European bodies getting the mandate to write the standards. This is also the reason why CEN and not ISO, and why CENELEC and not IEC get the mandate to write these harmonized standards. But
Okay.
for sure, CENELEC works together with IEC, CEN with ISO. We don't write everything from scratch new. There is a joint working on that, on these standards.
Yeah, and usually it's working like that where we have some standards that are existing, and from one day to another they become harmonized, and then they are written on the official journal, and which means that mainly you can use them. So in terms of those standards, do we know on this process of harmonization? Is there a timeline from the time we say, oh, let's harmonize them and it's harmonized? Is there like a long delay or
Yeah.
timeline?
So now we are trying to wrap up a little bit because there was a huge gap. So we had these different decisions of the European Court, which had an influence, especially when they said that these harmonized standards can be seen as part of the legislation and not only a private document, it is part of the legislation as soon as it went through the HAS consultant and the publication in the official journal. And this created quite a delay because this process of checking the standards and so on needed to be adopted. Then the contract with the company doing the the HAS consulting was over, so there was a new tender, and we needed a new mandate for the HAS consultants, which is now again gone to Ernst Young. So we have now again the solutions, and then we started over again at Zen and Zenelec to write this European forwards and the set annexes. Got again some discussions about how to do it, especially for the terms. So one example that was got some discussion is patients. What is a patient, which is differently defined in IC? In IC, a patient can be an animal or a human, as it is in the US, but in Europe, it's only a human.
Exactly.
So there we have not the same definition in the standard and in the MDR. So we had to figure out how can we get that resolved, and now we have a solution for that. And the first standards are now harmonized, and Zenelec is working also Zen on getting all the other standards, which are now a little bit in delay, harmonized as soon as possible.
So now that we have a mix of standards that are still not harmonized or harmonized, so how to use them to stay in conformity with what mainly is written on the MDR or IVDR? So mainly, what is mainly the process to use them?
Yeah. So the first thing is, if there is a harmonized standard, take this one. Take this one, and then you have the annex set, which compare the standard with the regulations and the directives. So, for example, for 4971 for risk management, there is a table which compares the requirements from the MDR with the requirements from the standard. And if there is written, this is covered by the standard, you can put that in your GSPR checklist and presume conformity. If it's written it's only partially covered, you need to add some additional information why or what you use to get it completely covered. And if it's not covered, you need your own or whatever solution, maybe another standard or something you have written down to get this point of the GSPR covered.
Exactly. Yeah.
And
So this conformity assessment will be so first you decide about using or not using the standard, and
exactly.
the check will be done at the end, like a final exam check when you are doing a diploma, by the notified body mainly.
Mainly by the notified body, or for the class 1 medical devices from the competent authority, which is responsible for your area.
I mean, competent authority are not really doing a lot of checks, I suppose, only if there is really a major issue on the market. But I don't think they will
with
be
the
checking.
MDR, they started to do more than they have done before with during the MED time. But in principle, the competent authorities are responsible for the monitoring of the class 1
Exactly.
manufacturers.
I mean, I'm sure that now if an authority goes to just target any class 1 devices, they will find a lot of issues or a lot of non-conformities about that. And it's understandable because class 1 is really low risk. So I don't think companies are putting a lot of investment on a lot of effort, not maybe investment, but a lot of effort on that, because when nobody's watching, so what will be what you will be doing, man?
So Swissmedic has published some percentages from their recent audits or inspection at class 1 medical devices. I think this press release was about a year ago.
Yeah, I remember. I covered
you remember,
that
and I think it was as about 75% of the companies where they found non-conformities.
Exactly.
Some only small, minor things, but quite a high percentage had even major things to correct after that.
It would have been strange to find a minor number of issues during class 1 devices, because we are experienced with those companies, and when we try to review their files, it's not really at the level of MDR. But yeah, as said, this is difficult also even for us as consultants to convince them to be at this level, because it costs a lot of money to arrive to this level, to create documentation, do this. And then at the end, they ask you the question, who will be checking that? Nobody. So then
Yeah,
it's
now you can say it's not nobody, it can be the competent authority, and now they do their audits. Question is
that
how many they do and how big is the chance that they get in this company you're consulting currently, but at least the probability is much higher than it was before.
exactly. And if they are going to check these harmonized standards, I mean, they know about that and they can also ask you question about those standards and those harmonized standards
It's
and why
exactly the
you are
same
compliant or
as
not.
the notified body. They will challenge your conformity assessment. They will check the GSPR checklist, the General Safety Performance Requirements. And if you can show how you think or how you have shown compliance with that requirement, the GSPR, then probably you get a non-conformity.
Yeah. Um, in case now that there is no harmonized standard, so mainly you are arriving, you are checking what is available on the harmonized list, you find nothing, then you go and check what are the other standards, as said. Um, so what is the consequence then for the conformity assessment?
Yeah. So the first thing I would do is check the database from Senelec. There is one database for both, and check whether there is already a standard which is in progress of harmonization and published. At the moment, we have the 6601-1. The EN version, so the amendment 13, is already published. It's available, but it's not yet in the official journal. So on the official journal list, you can find it. But the standard is already written and it's already published, so you can then use this one. You cannot yet presume the conformity, but it's quite more easy for you to argument in front of a notified body or a competent authority that you have used this already published EN standard with the set annex, which should get published soon, than if you have written your own test procedure or requirements. If there is no standard, no European standard with a set annex, then check whether there are IC or ISO standards, because this is what is usually seen as state of the art. And the MDR as well as the IVDR say you need to be state of the art. And if you take the state of the art standard, usually you can quite easily convince the auditors and inspectors.
Exactly.
The
And
other thing is the common specifications.
yeah,
So if there are common specifications which are written by the European Commission or their people they hire for that, then this is even to take a little bit higher in the ranking than the harmonized standards. So first is the common specifications, then harmonized standards, and then non-harmonized international standards. And if you can't find anything even there, then I would have a look, is there anything else you can take as proof of state of the art? I even once used a quite new FDA guidance, which then convinced the notified body that this what we do is state of the art, because the FDA has published this guidance about 2 or 3 weeks earlier than we have shown that to the notified body.
hey, just a second. Do you need a EU, Swiss, or UK representative? Then choose Easy Medical Device. We can represent you and also become your importer. Contact us at eo@easymedicaldevice.com. And in the case you have search and search and search and you find nothing, can I build your own test method or something that you assume or think that it's good? Because many you are the expert in the area, so you know maybe better what exactly are the criteria for acceptance, etc. So is it possible that I build my own test method, like standard, if I can say, for
Yeah,
my company, for my things, and it can be accepted by a notified body also?
it can be accepted. And if there is no standard, also the notified body will search for it. And if they also cannot find anything, then maybe they challenge you and ask, hey, why do you think this is sufficient? Why do you
Yeah,
think that's state of the art? And then you need to explain. The important thing is that you document what you do. So that you document that there is maybe no standard for that, or and at least you should document how you have tested it.
agree.
And this test should have all the required details on it. So who has done it, when, with which equipment, what was the unit under test, and so on, so that you have a good and meaningful test report.
Yeah, I had an experience now with the harmonized standards where um, the client was writing, you have to write also the list of all the standards that are applicable
Yeah,
to your company. And it's like ISO 14971, ISO 13485, etc. And say, no, 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 I should see EN ISO 14971 or EN ISO 13485. What is the situation here? Can you explain maybe?
yeah. So the reason is in the IC standard, this set annex is not available. In the ISO standard, this set annex is not available. So if you say I'm compliant with the ISO standard, these national or regional deviations from the European standard is not in there, which then in the end could make an auditor saying, hey, well, this is not what is on the list of harmonized standard in the official journal. We have the European version of that. I mean, we have the Frankfurt and the Vienna agreement, which say that we in principle have the same content in the standards. So there is no huge difference in the requirements, but in the end, the EN version is harmonized and listed and not the international IC or ISO standard.
So in that case, I just think now of the logistic way
Yeah.
here. We have a standard that is not harmonized. It becomes harmonized. Should I go now to all my documentation that I have written before, where I said, for example, ISO 14971, and now update everything to put EN ISO 14971, or is there another way for people to change that?
Or what we often do is that in the list, I mean, usually you have a list of applied and harmonized standards, and in this list we have two columns where we say this is the international we follow, and this is the corresponding European we follow, and then say if we write in the other plans and documents of the ISO standard, we also mean the EN version
Okay,
of
so it's a
which
translation to say if we write that, it means also that, which is a good trick. I hope it's people will like that.
I mean, in the end, it's the same what we do in the set annexes. We also say
Yeah.
there in the standard it's written that, and in the European legislation this means that. And it even in this set annexes there is a table for the standards. So if the 14971, which was harmonized, has a reference to another ISO standard, in the set annex, there is a table which says, okay, this other ISO standard is this and that EN standard, if there is a EN version. And so we do the same.
Great. No, I think it's a good tip, and I hope, because I imagine people listening now and think, oh, I have done maybe a correction of 10,000 documents where I should just have created the table and make a corresponding of the standard, and it's sufficient at all. So I hope it will save time for a lot of people that are listening today. Um, Now, both of us are located in Switzerland. Swiss is not in the European Union. So what about harmonized standards for manufacturers that are located in Switzerland, or for Swiss market, or for even for the US also? I mean, are we talking about harmonized standards only in Europe, or we talk about that also elsewhere?
Yeah. So if we start with Switzerland, so in principle, Switzerland unilaterally accepts the CE mark.
Yeah.
So if you go to Switzerland, to the Swiss market with the CE mark, you use the harmonized standards from Europe. In principle, you could also claim compliance with the Swiss Medical Device Ordinance, not with the MDR, just for Switzerland. And then also Switzerland has a list of harmonized standards, which is more or less the same. So Switzerland takes over what the European Union harmonizes, but there is also a Swiss list of harmonized standards. If you go to the Swissmedic website, then you can find the link to the Swiss harmonized standards.
Okay.
If you go to other countries like the US, they usually or most of the countries, they have their list of standards. They just have another name. For the FDA, it's the list of recognized consensus standards. But most other countries, they don't have this something similar like the set annexes, where this comparison between law and the standard is made. They just say, for this kind of product, we accept this and that standard, or we accept the principle this standard, like 13485, or quality management, which is in most countries recognized, harmonized, however it is called in this country. Also, the UK has its list of recognized standards, Canada, and so on.
And those recognized standards or standards mainly are specifically for the region where you are selling the devices here.
Yeah, well, most countries use the IC or ISO version of the international version and don't say we need the local version of the standard because they don't adopt it with these special set annexes as we do in Europe. But yes, sometimes in the US, for example, there are some differences in the voltages they use. So that then the FDA says the recognized consensus standard is the AMI version and not the IEC. Often they are even recognize both.
Okay. No, I think it's really important here to understand that, yeah, we have different languages, but at the end, each country decides by itself which standards is mainly harmonized, recognized, etc., because of the local situation also, and it's really also really important this. Okay, so I think we covered all about harmonized standards. In this mainly way, so how you, Beat, can help as you are now a freshly new consultant. So how can you help the audience that maybe are looking for some support here?
Yeah. So especially if we look for the harmonized standard, I can support finding the right standard, whether it is a harmonized standard or a not yet harmonized standard. So I have done this already a couple of times for my customers. If I figure out which are the standards you should follow. But then also, how can we implement that? Because this is something often we have a standard and there are two parallel ways. So we have the regulatory quality teams looking on the standards, says this is our standards we need to follow. And then we have the engineers just going to the straight implementation way, and somehow we need to get them connected. And as I'm a former development engineer, I can quite good understand the language of the development team and try to translate the standard and legislation wording to a software engineer wording.
Great.
Which is not quite the same always.
Yeah, I can imagine so. So I will put anyway all your details on the show notes. So for people that are listening, so you can directly go on the show notes and see the LinkedIn page and of Beat and contact him directly. And if you have any questions, any of what we talked, maybe you can also comment on our LinkedIn posts and YouTube channel also. And yeah, if there is other topics that maybe you want Beat to share with us, so don't hesitate to tell that to me. You can send me an email at info@easymedicaldevice.com, and then we can try to find a topic with Beat to come back to another episode. Okay, so Beat, it was really a pleasure to have you again. I hope really that everything here helped the audience and principally the tip of organizing the standard and the harmonized standard so that you don't have to modify all the documentation. And yeah, I hope this will be helping a lot of people. Okay, so Beat, thank you very much, and I wish you a nice day.
Thank you for the invite and looking forward to see you again.
Sure.
Bye, buddy.
Bye.